Hello everyone, my name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute. Thanks so much for joining me for Preston's Ponderings. We're in the midst of a study of Matthew 16:27 and 28, where our Lord said, "The Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels, and shall reward every man according to his works. Verily I say unto you, there are some standing here which shall not taste of death, until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom with power and great glory." I've been demonstrating the unity between verse 27 and 28. The reason for doing that is because many attempts are made to say that verse 27 is the end of time, the end of the Christian age. We'll have more to say about that later. While verse 28 is ostensibly a different time and a different event. We are told that verse 28 may refer to the day of Pentecost, when the kingdom was ostensibly fully established. Or we are told that it's the beginning of the millennium. We'll have more to say about that later as well. Well, in a previous segment, I suggested to you that the coming of the Lord in judgment, Matthew 16:27, is also the coming of the Lord in the kingdom, and that because that is true, you cannot separate, you cannot divorce the verse 27 from verse 28. The coming of the Lord in judgment is the coming of the Lord in the kingdom. The coming of the Lord in the kingdom is the time of the coming of the Lord in judgment. Therefore, Matthew 16:27 and 28 are one and the same event. In a previous segment, I shared with you the parallels with Revelation chapter 11, verses 15 to 18. In Revelation, we are told that the time of the coming of the kingdom would be the time of the judgment of the living and the dead. It would be the time of the rewarding, in other words. And it would take place in conjunction with the destruction and the judgment of the city where the Lord was slain. Revelation chapter 11, verse 8. Now, one of the chief arguments against this is, well, hey, Revelation was written after the fall of Jerusalem. It was written in the time of Domitian in the 90s, wasn't it? Well, that's certainly the popular view. But let me share with you just a tiny bit of the information that disproves that. Keep in mind that John was told that the fulfillment of his vision, all of the vision, not part of it, not some of it, but all of the vision was at hand and was coming soon. Revelation 1, 1 to 3. But let me share with you some of the information that proves that Revelation was about the fall of Jerusalem that was to occur in AD 70. Revelation was written prior to that event and predicted that event. Point number one, let's look at the life of Jesus, shall we? Jesus in Matthew chapter 21, in telling the parable of the vineyard, foretold his own death at the hands of the Jews. That's unequivocal. No one denies that, do they? Well, in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus likewise spoke of Israel's bloody history and spoke of how Israel had slain all of the prophets. All of the blood of all of the righteous was being laid at the feet of Israel. So Jesus said that it was Israel and Jerusalem that had killed the old covenant prophets. They were going to kill him, and then he said, in the parallel passage to Matthew chapter 23, in Luke 11:49 and following, Jesus said, "Behold, I send to you apostles, prophets, wise men, and scribes. Some of them you shall crucify and scourge, chase from city to city, that upon you may come all of the blood of all of the righteous shed upon the earth, from righteous Abel unto Zacharias son of Barachias, whom you killed between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all of these things will come upon this generation." So notice this. Jesus said that it was Old Covenant Israel and Jerusalem that had killed the Old Testament prophets. They were going to kill him. They were going to kill his apostles and prophets. In so doing, by the way, they were going to fill up the measure of their sin, Matthew chapter 23, 30 and following, and judgment was going to fall on Jerusalem and Israel in that generation. Verily I say unto you, all of these things shall come upon this generation. Okay? Now take a look at what Paul had to say. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, 15 to 17, Paul said the Jews and Jerusalem had killed the prophets. That's what Jesus said, wasn't it? They have now, at the time Paul wrote, they had killed Jesus, fulfilling Jesus' prophecy of Matthew chapter 21. And now, Paul said, they do also kill the apostles and prophets of Jesus. Isn't that what Jesus foretold? And he said in doing that, they were filling up the measure of their sin. And he said, the wrath of God has come upon them to the uttermost. In other words, the imagery of the Greek language is that wrath of God was like a huge boulder sitting at the edge of a bluff, just about to fall over on them. Wrath and judgment was imminent. So, Jesus and Paul agree. Old Covenant Jerusalem killed the prophets. They killed Jesus. They were now killing the apostles and prophets of Jesus. They were filling up the measure of their sin in doing so, and judgment was coming very soon in the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. Now watch what we find in Revelation. In Revelation chapter 16 and verse 6, the prophets, and by the way, the term prophets is used 88 times in the New Testament, and when it's used without a qualifier, a textual qualifier that says it's, the prophets of Jesus, it is invariably Old Covenant prophets. But you see, in Babylon was found the blood of the Old Covenant prophets. Okay? Revelation 11 verse 8, the city where the Lord was crucified. That's Jerusalem. So Babylon was guilty of killing the prophets. It is where the Lord was slain. And in Revelation chapter 18, verse 20 and 24, Babylon was guilty of killing the apostles and prophets of Jesus. She is called guilty of shedding all of the blood shed on the earth. And oh, by the way, Revelation chapter 17, verse 6 and following says her cup of guilt was now full because it was full of the blood of the martyrs. And Jesus said, behold, I come quickly. Now, no one denies that when Jesus said it was Jerusalem that had killed the prophets, would kill him, and they would kill his apostles and prophets, and judgment was coming in his generation. No one denies that applied to AD 70. Virtually no one denies that when Paul said it was the Jews who had killed the prophets, had now killed Jesus, and they were killing the apostles and prophets of Jesus. Their cup was full, and judgment was coming. Virtually no one denies that Paul was talking about the impending fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. Okay, we come to Revelation then, and all of a sudden we have a symbolic name, i.e. Babylon, and Babylon had killed the prophets. It is where the Lord was slain. She was killing the apostles and prophets of Jesus, and her cup was now full, and judgment was coming, and we're supposed to believe that Babylon in Revelation was the Roman Catholic Church, or literal Babylon in Iraq, or, Rome, or some other entity. No. Babylon in Revelation is the Jerusalem of Matthew 23. It is the Jerusalem of 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. Now what does that mean? That means in Revelation chapter 11, when we are told that Jesus was coming at the time of the judgment of the city where the Lord was slain, he was coming in judgment, and he was coming at the time of the resurrection, and he was coming at the time of the kingdom, that since those are the very constituent elements of Matthew 16, 27 and 28, and since Jesus said in Matthew 16 it was going to happen in his generation, and since Revelation said that it was happening soon, Matthew 16, 27 and 28, and Revelation chapter 11 speak of the same event at the same time in the first century. Hey, we've got a whole lot more. Thanks for joining us for Preston's Ponderings.